Seize Your Destiny, A Roadmap to Success. And it was written for a 15-year-old. And once I published that book, I started getting some feedback. One young man wrote me and he said, "Your book spoke to me like the father I never had." And I thought, wow, you know, that's impactful, right? I'm on the right path. This is good. This is what I should be doing. This is good. And so I thought, you know, what I had done was I had downloaded what I had learned in my professional life, and we're going back 10 years now, so this was my professional life over the prior 30 years. And I thought, well, that's great. I, you know, succeeded in downloading what I wanted to download in the letter, but the world that my daughter was going to live in was not the world that I had lived in. It was going to unfold over the next 30 years, the next 40 years. What was that world going to be like? And I didn't know anything about that world, right? I had never looked at the future. I had never looked at technology. I had never looked at blockchain or NFTs or AI, certainly. And I didn't know anything about it. So I went on a reconnaissance mission. I jumped on my horse and I went over the hill and I started looking over the hill. The things that I hadn't seen without that effort. Just like if I were asking you what's going on in that room back there, you couldn't tell me because you're not looking at it, right? You have to be looking at it in order to know what is happening. So once I started looking at it, I became amazed at what I saw. And I thought, you know, I didn't know any of this stuff. And I'm a pretty well-read guy. I'm a fairly educated guy, right? Went to law school, worked for one of the world's largest law firms. You know, I thought I was pretty knowledgeable, and I didn't know any of these things. And so I thought, well, if I don't know any of these things, then a lot of people don't know any of these things. And so I need to share this. I need to write a second book, and I need to advise her on the next 30 and 40 years. What does she need to know about that? And that became my second book, called Millennial Samurai, A Mindset for the 21st Century. There are copies of that book here back on that table. You're all invited to take one, please. Share it. Share it with everyone that you know. I really believe that it is important for people to read this book. So much so that I'm giving it away for free. So you can go to millennialsamurai.com and you can download the entire book for free. Not a little piece of it, not a couple of chapters, the whole thing, right? 14,000 people have downloaded that book for free already, okay? I want 1 million people. So help me get 1 million people by spreading the word about the book, by telling people that they can download it for free, okay? It's not about selling books. Nobody makes money selling books, very, very few people. The average author of a self-published book on Amazon sells 100 books in its lifetime, right? You don't write books to make money. You write books because you have something to say, right? I believe that I've said some things in that book that are important, and I believe that it needs to be shared. Look at it, check it out. It's very uniquely written in that it's divided into 182 chapters that are only 1 to 3 pages each for the short attention span reader, okay? So a lot of people don't read books. You hand a kid a 444-page book, they're probably not going to read it, although I had a 14-year-old who read it cover to cover in one sitting. Woke up in the morning, his mom said, wouldn't go to bed until 2 in the morning, finished the book, 14 years old, okay? So they like it. It's, you know, there's something there. You're going to meet a poet named Rodney Lee tomorrow, who's going to talk about being Black in America, and he teaches and works with black kids and underprivileged kids, and he's been giving them my book, and he says that to those that read it, to those that actually pick it up and open it up and start to read it, the comments to him are that they feel that that book was written for them. You know, I spoke to 100 recently released inmates and Hope for Prisoners, and I had inmates coming up to me and saying, I want to be a Millennial Samurai, right? So that's Millennial Samurai. That's started this process of me on a journey to try to empower other people. Uvolution is the next stage in that process. And that stage will involve emails that are 3-minute multimedia bundles on video that these young people will receive on their phones. So they don't have to read the book. All of the information in the book will be made into these extraordinary little micro videos, drawing upon the greatest research in micro learning out of Harvard, Stanford, Carnegie Mellon, and Yale. So that's the journey, that's where we're going. Nico? The forest. We're kind of running behind schedule because I did not want to cut David off. He had too much to share, too much gold to mine. And so we're running a little bit behind. We're going to be going to lunch. We've got to do an interview with Joe Brown and Nico and Nathan. We may do that after lunch, if that's okay. The forest. Most of us go through life looking at the trees. What's in front of us, right? The job that we're doing, the business that we're launching, getting our kids off to school, paying the rent, taking care of our elderly parents. These are the trees. Rarely do you have the luxury to sit back and look at the forest, the big picture. What's going on in the world? What the hell is going on in the world, okay? That's what we're gonna talk about today. Now, Aristotle once said that the man who thinks he knows everything knows nothing at all. And he was so right, okay? Fellow Greek, you can appreciate that. I don't know. Are you Greek too?
I was a Greek major.
Oh, you were a Greek major. Okay, that's right.
We can't open up a restaurant.
Yeah, we can't open up a restaurant. Okay, so I don't profess to know everything. In fact, there's only one thing, really there's only one thing in life. Elon Musk was asked, what would you ask God? And he said, I'd ask her what's going on outside the sim, right? Meaning that this is a simulation, that this is, that we're not real, that this is a simulation. I don't know if it's a simulation. I don't even know that. I don't even know that I'm standing here. I know one thing. The one thing that I know for certain is that there is a great deal that I do not know. I know that for certain. I know that for certain, okay? So the same is true of all of you. We all have these ideas about how the world is and what things are and what they should be and how we should think about this and how we should think about Ukraine and how we should think about Israel and Hamas and how we should think about Joe Biden or Donald Trump. And we all have these views, right? Your views, the Talmud says, we see the world not as it is, but as we are. As we are, right? You see it through your prism, your life, right? You grew up a certain way. We didn't grow up in the same homes. We didn't have the same parents. We didn't have the same siblings. We didn't read the same books. We didn't see the same movies. We didn't go to the same lectures. It's no wonder we all see the world differently, right? So what is truth, right? We'll talk about truth as we go. So I don't want to go into that now. And sometimes I do that in this speech where I don't follow my format because it's not memorized, it's all impromptu. So this speech changes every time, okay? Forrest, next slide, please. Change is coming, okay? Well, you know that, you think you know that, okay? You have not seen the tip of the iceberg, okay? In 2014, theoretical physicist Stephen Hawking said that the singularity, that moment in time when machine intelligence would eclipse human intelligence, would be the greatest event in human history. Greater than fire, greater than the wheel, greater than anything we have ever conceived of. Ray Kurzweil, the head of artificial intelligence for Google, the guy who Bill Gates says knows more about AI than anyone he knows, Kurzweil tells us that that moment in time, that singularity, that greatest event in human history, could come as early as 2029. It's 2024, folks. That's 5 years away, okay? Elon Musk says it may come sooner. I believe it may come sooner. So Kurzweil goes on to say that by the 2040s, 20 years from now, artificial intelligence will not be our equal. It will be 1 billion times 1,000,000,000 times more capable than human intelligence. The human brain lacks the capacity to even comprehend what an intelligence 1,000,000,000 times our own means. So I don't know, you don't know, Musk doesn't know, Hawking doesn't know, none of us know what's ahead. But it is going to be seismic. It is going to be tectonic. It is going to create a level of disruption that we have never experienced and can't even imagine. And it is going to be rolling out over the next 20 to 30 years. Let's say they're off on the timing. Let's say it's not 5 years, let's say it's 10 years. Let's say it's not the 2040s, but it's the 2050s. It's coming, folks. It's coming like a freight train, okay? So you need to get ready for it. We all need to get ready for it. We all need to be talking about it. It doesn't do any good to not talk about it, right? Leaders don't run from problems, they run at them. And AI represents not just a problem, it represents an extraordinary opportunity to create what I believe could be a second enlightenment, right? So this is not bad. This is not scary. I mean, some of you may think it's bad and some of you may think it's scary, but that's your perception. That's not reality. That's just the way you think about it, okay? So when I think about people's opinions, I think about a jigsaw puzzle. I think about each of us, our view of the world is like one piece of that jigsaw puzzle. The truth is the whole puzzle. It's not the piece that's rolling around in your head. It's the whole puzzle, okay? And I could talk more about changes coming. I could go on for days about changes coming, but we don't have time, okay? The human brain. Nobody gives us a manual, right? Einstein says that the path to success is to learn the rules of the game and then become really great at the game, right? Well, nobody teaches us the rules of the game, right? And so, and nobody teaches us about how our brains work. But our brains are not simply objective seekers of truth. They are also advocates for that which we already believe. If the brain is filled with false information, then the brain is going to come to false conclusions, right? If you're a Hamas terrorist, your brain is telling you that, Israel is evil, right? It doesn't mean Israel is evil. It just means that's what's in your brain. That's what your brain is telling you. It is not acting as an objective seeker of truth. It is an advocate for what that Hamas terrorist already believes, okay? That's how your brains work. You need to understand that, okay? Alvin Toffler, there's a slide here, I'm getting ahead of myself again, but Toffler said, the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write. It will be those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. You've got a lot of false information rolling around in your heads that you need to get out of your heads, okay? You need to identify. Now, here's another thing about the brain that's a double-edged sword. Your brain is a huge, massive double-edged sword. Your brain receives approximately 11 million bits of information every second of the day. 11 million bits of information every second of the day. This has been happening since the time you were born, okay? Yet your conscious brain can only process 15 to 50 bits of information per second, which means that more than 99% of the information that is coming into your brain every day since you were born is coming in outside of your conscious awareness. And if it's coming in outside of your conscious awareness, it means you have not had an opportunity to interrogate that information, to determine its veracity or its truthfulness or its legitimacy. But it's in there. It's in your brain. And your brain is acting upon that information, okay? So you have an Achilles heel. Your brain is a double-edged sword, okay? It is at once your greatest weapon for survival, And at the same time, it is your greatest vulnerability. Because if you've got that trapped door, and the vast majority of information can come into your brain outside of your conscious awareness, think of the implications of that with social media, right? And we'll talk about that, okay? So just understanding how your brain works is very, very important. And understanding how everyone else's brain works and how they can be manipulated and what this can mean for humanity and for you and for your family and for all of us is a very important concept to understand. Next, please. Barriers to truth. You know, you look at the media today. In 1960, Walter Cronkite was the most trusted man in America. Okay, that's not true of Don Lemon. That's not true of Anderson Cooper. You know, that's not true of Sean Hannity. Okay, media has become segmented. Media is a profit-driven commercial enterprise. They are appealing to the confirmation biases of their market share. Fox News wants the Fox viewer to believe what they already believe. That's why they're watching Fox, because it makes them feel comfortable. Because they're watching Sean Hannity and they're saying, he's saying what I believe, right? So I must be right. Because here's the guy on TV and he's saying everything I believe. Well, the guy who's watching, you know, Anderson Cooper on CNN, Anderson's playing to his confirmation bias. And that guy is feeling really comfortable with Anderson Cooper and Don Lemon. And he's listening to what they're saying and they're making him feel good, right? He's being validated, right? Our egos want validation. We want validation more than we want the truth. We want to believe we're right. We want to believe the person we married is the right person. We want to believe the person we voted for is the right person. We want to believe the job that we're in is the right job. We want to believe the car that we just bought or the house that we just bought is the right car or the right house. That's what we want to believe. We want validation. We want to be loved. We want to be accepted. We want to be right. Because if we're right, all is good, right? And all is good if you're right. It's when you're wrong that creates a problem. It's when you're wrong that you need to discover that you're wrong so that you can course correct, okay? But there are these barriers to truth. There's this misinformation. You know, if Fox has a story, it will report that story in a way that is shaded towards the confirmation biases of its viewers. If CNN has a story, it will shade that story. It will eliminate certain information that is inconsistent with the narrative that they are trying to advance, and you will be given a false narrative, right? But it's what the viewership wants. It's what the majority of the viewership wants. These are barriers to truth. We go into these echo chambers, and this hardens our beliefs. So we think a certain way, we're liberal, and now our beliefs are being hardened by the media that we're consuming, by the people that we surround ourselves with, and our biases are becoming more entrenched, more hardened, and it's creating greater division in this country. Media is creating greater division in this country because they are appealing to the confirmation biases of their market share, okay? So just be aware of it, be aware of what's going on. This is important information not just for how you view the world, but understanding this is how other people are being made to view the world through false narratives that are economically driven or ideologically driven, mostly economically driven, okay? All right, so be aware of barriers to truth. The illiterate of the 21st century, you've already heard that. Next, Nika. Tribalism. We have been in tribes since the beginning, right? When we were roaming the planet and living in caves, right? In the beginning, human beings could cooperate and coordinate and collaborate with groups of up to about 100 people. And so we lived in these tribes, okay? Yuval Noah Harari wrote 3 great books, one of them Sapiens, and in that book he talks about social fictions, social fabric, right? Humans have created these social fictions for us to be able to work and collaborate with greater numbers of people, right? So we developed religions, we developed city-states, right? And we developed countries, and we developed corporations, and we developed fraternities, and we developed these communities, right? That allow us to be tribal and to have a relationship. If I'm in Europe and I'm traveling and I meet an American, oh, you're an American and I'm an American, right? Or I'm at a party and I've got red hair. Oh, I've got red hair and you've got red hair. There's an affinity, there's a connection, right? If I, stand for the national anthem and you stand for the national anthem, there's a connection. If I'm kneeling for the national anthem, you're not part of my tribe, okay? But you're part of a different tribe. You're part of the tribe that kneels alongside, right? I believe that those types of actions tear at the social fabric of our country. And I believe that in order to succeed as a community, that we need to be a community. We need to be Americans. We need to be, part of humanity, part of the planet. The larger the tribe, the better. It's when we break down into these smaller tribes that creates the problem, right? So tribalism in and of itself, the larger the tribe, the better tribalism. The smaller the tribe, the more, elements of tribes that start warring with each other, city-states, political parties. This is destructive. This is destructive to the social fabric. This is destructive to what we as humans need to collaborate and to work together, okay? Next. Harari is a brilliant author. What, quote? Okay. If the nation is facing external invasion or diabolical subversion, who has time to worry about overcrowded hospitals or polluted rivers, right? So by distracting us, by saying Russian collusion, by saying Donald Trump is a menace, by saying, Democrats are Marxists, all of these things are divisive, right? They're divisive. And they distract us. They distract us. What are our elected officials supposed to be doing? They're supposed to be focusing on the overcrowded hospitals and the polluted rivers. They're supposed to be solving problems, okay? They're supposed to be helping us move forward. Some of them do. Some of them are a credit to their position, right? Some of them don't. And some of them are harming us, okay? So we need to be more discerning about who we're putting into office, okay? We need to look at these people more carefully, and we need to not do it on the basis of partisanship. We need to do it on the basis of the quality of the individual. Think about the quality of the individual. Are they a man or a woman of character? Are they someone of substance? Is their heart in the right place? Are they smart? These are the people that we should be electing. Forget about the labels. Forget about the blue and the red. Forget about the donkey and the elephant, okay? In 2016, I was a Republican, okay? But I was what they call a rhino. I was a proud rhino, okay? I was pro-choice. I was pro-LGBTQ. I was pro-moderate gun control. I very, very strongly believe in the Second Amendment in the entire Bill of Rights. First Amendment foremost, Second Amendment equally as important. But, there's a limit, right? I have a automatic weapon, okay? I've got several guns, and I've got an automatic weapon. But if everybody agreed to get rid of their automatic weapons, I would say, here's mine. Here's mine, take mine. I'm happy to give it away if everybody's going to give it away, because that would be good. That would be better, right? So, it's not about you. It's not about me. It's about us. It's about us. I don't give a fuck what you believe. It is about us. It is about all of us, okay? And unless you have that mindset, then you're part of the problem. You're not part of the solution, okay? So have that mindset. Subjugate your own ego. Subjugate what's important to you and think about the greater good. Think about how you're going to leave this planet. Think about what you're going to leave to your children and your grandchildren, right? Think about the greater good. Think about us. Don't think about me, 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 me. Next, please. Alternative perspectives. Why are these so important? Think about it. If you're a piece of the jigsaw puzzle and you want to see the whole picture, then you need to know what the other pieces are thinking, okay? Alternative perspectives are not threats. Alternative perspectives are assets. You have to look at alternative perspectives as assets. If you know what you're talking about, if you are on the right path, if you are moving towards truth and prosperity and all things good, then you're great. Then no problem. It's when you're not that you need to make a course correction. It's when you're wrong that you need to discover that you're wrong. Now, where are you going to discover that you're wrong? Are you going to discover it in an echo chamber where everybody thinks like you do? Or are you going to be discovering it by talking to this other group that you're not part of, that you don't think like, right? Maybe they have the answer to that particular issue, right? Republicans have great ideas, personal responsibility, diligence, integrity, all the things that Republicans stand for. They've got some great beliefs. Democrats, want to help people, right? They profess to want to help people, right? Compassion, right? These are great things as well, right? So we have to cherry pick. We have to cherry pick the best ideas from both groups, and we need to jettison the rest. We need to find the center, right? No one today is going to lead this country from either the left or the right in an equally divided country. We must be led from the center. We must cherry pick the best ideas from both sides and bring those ideas together and move forward together as a country from the center. Alternative perspectives are not your enemies. They're your assets, okay? When I'm driving down the road and I'm trying to switch lanes, I'll ask Donna, am I clear on the right? Why am I asking her, am I clear on the right? I have a rear view mirror, I have side view mirrors, because Donna can lean her head out and get me a view that none of these other devices offer me. She has an alternative perspective, okay? If you want to see, I've spent 40 years as a complex problem solver, and I can tell you that the trick is to get a 360-degree perspective to solve a problem. You want to know everything. You want to know everything you can. And then, after gathering all that information, you want to analyze that information, assess that information, consciously look and critically examine that information and arrive at good conclusions, right? In order to arrive at the right answers, you need knowledge. The more knowledge, the better. The more perspectives, the better. So that's what you're looking for, alternative perspectives. Next, Nika. Data. Data is the new oil. Data is the holy grail. Yuval Noah Harari spoke in 2018 at the World Economic Forum, and he said that in order to hack the human being, you need two things. You need massive computing power. He said organisms are algorithms. And in order to hack the human brain and the human being, in order to recreate human beings from scratch, you need two things. You need massive computing power and you need data, massive aggregations of data, primarily biometric data. There's a thing called the biometric sensor that is able to turn biometric chemical reactions in our body into electronic signals that computers can read and understand, right? So if you have all this biometric data, then you're able to understand everything about our body. One of our speakers is going to be talking about, knowledge of your body, knowledge of your health, knowledge of everything about what's going on in you. We now have the technology to figure that out. We have another speaker who's going to be talking about a very exciting new technology that we'll get into more, but about health and wellness using AI. So we are at a point where this massive aggregation of data and this massive computing power. So today, when I started looking at supercomputers, there was the Sunway Tau light out of China. It was calculating at 124 petaflops per second. That's 124 quadrillion calculations per second. Today, and this was several years ago, and China was saying that we will have a supercomputer next year that calculates at 1 quintillion, 1,000 petaflops per second, not 124. We don't know where China is today. We know that the US has the Frontier computer, which calculates at 1 quintillion calculations per second, right? We don't know where China is, but we are in a race. We are in a race with China and other countries that are getting into this race right now towards the singularity, that moment in time that Stephen Hawking talked about. In 2017, Vladimir Putin said, "He who controls AI will control the world because they will be able to subjugate all other countries," right? They will be able to rule the planet if they control AI, right? The world's #1 chip manufacturing, high-end, high-speed chip manufacturing, there's no place on the planet that's doing it at a higher level than in Taiwan, okay? So you wonder about China and Taiwan, right? We had a 50-plus year positive relationship with China. Nixon and Kissinger opened up relations with China in 1972. They went to a dinner, and at that dinner, they signed on to an American policy that was required for the Chinese to open their markets and to open diplomatic relations with China. And it was called the One China policy. And it was essentially that Taiwan is part of China. And we agreed, that was the deal. That was the deal that America made with China. We made it 50 years ago. And every president since then has honored that deal. Today, we have pivoted in our relationship and done a 180-degree turnaround from our relationship with China over the One China policy. Why? Because we are racing towards the singularity, and the holy grail chips that we covet are in Taiwan. And so we don't want a One China policy anymore. We want Taiwan Semiconductor's chips, right? We've also called Japan and we've called Finland and we've said cut China off from advanced chip technology. We've passed the CHIPS Act in the United States that says that no one who works in high-end chip technology manufacturing and AI can work for a Chinese company anymore without US government approval. And no one can ship those materials to China. And then we've reached out to our allies like China and Finland and said, do the same thing. This is essentially multiple Manhattan projects, okay? The US has an AI Manhattan project, China has an AI Manhattan project, and we are racing full steam towards the singularity, okay? And it's gonna happen. Somebody's gonna reach it, probably within 5 years. Now, imagine if I were to tell you, everybody out the door, first person out the door lives and everybody else dies. You think that's gonna be a fair race towards the door? You think somebody's gonna tip over that light in front of me so I can't get out the door, right? It's not gonna be a fair race. It's not gonna be a calm race. It's gonna be disruptive, okay? And how we manage it and how we address it. I mean, is it through competition? Is it first out the door? Or is it collaboration? Can we figure out an answer where we work together as a planet and we work together as all countries and we share the bounties of collaboration and AI, right? And we build a second enlightenment, right? A planetary second enlightenment. This is the opportunity. This is the challenge. This is the ultimate challenge. And it's going on right now. And we should be talking about it. And there aren't a lot of people talking about it, okay? As I look around, I'm one of the few that's talking about it like this. I haven't seen anyone else on social media talking about it. I spoke at Google on November 1st about this very issue. And the reason was that I had spoken at another conference and one of the executives for Google was in the audience and she walked up and she said, "Visionary, you need to bring this to Google. You need to speak at Google." And I did. And if other people were already telling them this, then they wouldn't have needed me to speak to them. So anyway, not enough people are talking about this. Harari says that the main industry of the 21st century will be the manufacturing of bodies and brains. I mean, think about that. That's going to be the main industry of the 21st century. He said our conflicts in the future, our divisions in the future, will not be based on race. They will not be based on economic differences. They will be based on the different species that we will have created. The different species that we will have created. Now, people want this. Some people want this desperately because they want to live longer, right? Aubrey de Grey of the SENS Research Foundation says that the first person who will live to 1,000 years old is alive today. Is alive today, meaning a baby born today. They expect that over their normal lifespan of 100 years, we will increase lifespans to up to 1,000 years. This is the game that is at play. This is what's going on. And there are people that want that, right? Very, very wealthy people, very powerful people that want that, right? And so it's coming. You're not going to stop it. It's coming. You just can hope that maybe you can control the way in which it's developed, right? You can create the guardrails. You can create the legislation. You can create the procedures and the policies and what can be done and what can't be done. You know, you can put in place some rules, global rules that we all agree to play by. And then you have issues of who's going to play by the rules, right? And how do you enforce those rules? Well, we have that with nuclear arms, but we've managed to regulate that, and we've managed to control that. And that could be, an existential threat and a planetary extinction event, but we've managed to control that. And we can do the same thing with AI. We can do the same thing with AI, but not without talking about it, not without trying, not without focusing on it. Next slide. The people who control the data will control not just humanity, but the future of life itself. Next slide. Connecting the dots. So let's put some of this together, okay? Next slide. So you've got economic inequality, the greatest level of economic inequality in the last 100 years, in over 100 years, okay? You've got 3 human beings that control more wealth than the bottom 200 million human beings, okay? The greater that economic inequality becomes, the more unsustainable it becomes. It's an issue. You've got political dysfunction. My God, do we have political dysfunction? I mean, I don't know why someone isn't pulling Biden by the hair out of office, okay? I mean, this guy is an unmitigated disaster, okay? And I'm not anxious for Donald Trump to be his replacement, okay? I'm anxious for somebody good, somebody honest, somebody honorable, somebody intelligent, somebody who cares about all of us more than they care about themselves. You know, don't tell Donald Trump it's not about me, right? For him, it's about me, right? Don't tell Joe Biden it's not about me. You know, these guys are in it for themselves, and we don't need them. We need people who are in it for us, right? You know, as a lawyer, we have this concept of a fiduciary duty. It's the highest duty known under the law to your clients, right? Joe, you know this, right? So, you know, when I was Attorney General, I represented 3 million people. I didn't represent just Sheldon Adelson. I didn't represent just Steve Wynn. I didn't represent just Joe Brown. I represented 3 million people. My fiduciary duty was to all of those people, okay? That's what we need. We need someone like that. And no, I'm not running for office, okay? No, I'm not running for office, okay? I'm not running for office, okay? So been there and done that. In fact, Joe Brown, I would not have been the Attorney General of the state of Nevada were it not for this man, Joe Brown. This man is like a second father to me, okay? I love him to death, okay? Joe Brown, Brian Sandoval resigned to become a federal judge. He was given a lifetime appointment, and the governor went to the smartest lawyer in Nevada, and the guy who was the managing partner of the state's top law firm, and he said, find me his replacement. And I'm at the Trinidad fight, and Joe Brown is on the athletic commission, and he's a boxing, used to box, was in the Marines, used to box, and loves boxing, so of course he was at the fight. So he walks into the Fiamma restaurant at the MGM, and he says, George, I've been thinking about you. And I said, really, Joe, what about? And he said, well, he told me the story about the governor, appointing him to find the next attorney general. And he said, I think you'd be great, right? And it shot me back to when I was 6 years old. I was 6 years old. I was driving down Paradise Road with my mom. Came over the radio that the Kennedy had been assassinated. My mom pulled the car to the side of the road, started crying hysterically. And I remember it like it was yesterday. And I went home and I watched television, and I watched this global outpouring of love and respect for this fallen hero. And I told my mom when I was 6, I want to be him. And I don't know why a 6-year-old does that. Maybe I wanted to be loved. We all want to be loved, right? And this man was loved. Then I set out to do that. By the time I was 10, I knew that most presidents were lawyers. So I had to become a lawyer. So I was watching Perry Mason. I was objecting to the television set. And I was on my way. By the time I was 12, I had it mapped out. My mom introduced me to a gentleman named Sig Front. He was the marketing director at the Sahara Hotel. Sig took me to lunch. And he said, I understand you want to be president. I was 12 years old. He took a placemat. We're sitting in a booth at the Sahara Hotel. He takes a placemat, he flips it over, he starts to draw some lines in a matrix. He goes, okay, here's what you need to do. You're going to be student body president here, then you're going to run for the assembly, then you're going to run for the Senate, then you're going to run for Congress, and just down the line, he laid it all out. I wish I had that placemat. But anyway, it was a childhood dream. It was a childhood dream. And when and then when I was 21, I was following the path. I was about to go to law school. I was working for Senator Laxalt in Washington, D.C. And it was during ABSCAM. And I was in the Russell Senate office building. And I was in the elevator doors open up, and in come the ABSCAM co-conspirators with their wives. And they're about to resign in front of an international press corps in disgrace. And I looked at their faces, and it was another epiphany moment for me, like the car ride. And I thought, I never want to be one of these guys. I never want to endure that level of disgrace and bring that kind of dishonor on my Greek family. My dad and his brothers. And so I thought, well, what do I need to do? And I thought, well, I need to make money. I need to make money so I can sit across from anybody. And I can tell them that if what you want is good government, then I'm your guy. And if what you want is something else, then I'm not your guy. And I remember doing that with Steve Wynn. And I told him the story. And I told him just that. And he said, very interestingly and very poetically or profoundly, he said, it's not the money that corrupts. It's the aphrodisiac of power. And I said, well, it's a good thing I don't need that either, right? But when you think about his story, the aphrodisiac of power is poignant. So in any case, I go forward in life. I go to law school. I work for one of the biggest law firms in the world. And I come back to Vegas and I build my own firm, and I get clients like Sheldon Adelson at the Venetian Hotel, and I'm a rising, star in the law. And then in walks Joe Brown into this restaurant and tells me that I think you'd be great. And I had just done a real estate deal. I had bought a piece of property for $2.5 million, and I had sold it. I put it in escrow for $10 million 4 months later. $7.5 million windfall. And then in walks Joe Brown. And I said, okay, this is God, this is karma, this is my destiny, this reaching out to me. And I said, yeah, I will shut down my lucrative law practice and I'll take that job for $135,000 a year, because I'm meant to do this, right? And when I got in, I found that it was very, very, for me, For me, it was very, very toxic. It was, I had lobbyists calling me every day as Attorney General and trying to influence, the way that I would handle matters. And I would tell them not to call. I would tell my secretary, I don't want to talk to him, right? And that didn't go over very well. And then there were turf battles. I wanted to be involved in the big issues of the day. I wanted to be involved in water. Well, you don't, go try to push Pat Mulroy off the water pedestal, right? I wanted to be involved in homeland security. Well, Harry Reid had carved out that territory, right? So it was tough. It was tough. And then, it just got to the point where I thought, I don't need this. I don't need this. And so I had dinner with Joe, and Joe said, George, please, you can be governor. And I'm sure he remembers. I took the keys that were on the table and I said, Joe, if you gave me the keys to the governor's mansion, I would tell you I don't want it. I had a 5-to-1 fundraising advantage. I raised $1.2 million. This is a matter of public record. I raised $1.2 million in the first 3 months. My opponent, who is now a United States Senator, raised $165,000, Catherine Cortez Masto. I gave all the $1.2 million back to my contributors, and I raised money for my Democratic opponent, Catherine. Okay? Now, if you can find another person around the country that's done that, I'd be interested in meeting him, because I don't think there is one. But in any case, no more politics for me. I still want to make a difference like that kid, but I'm going to do it through Uvolution. I'm going to do it through Millennial Samurai. I'm going to do it through writing. I'm going to do it through speaking. I don't need public office personally, okay? All right, so you got all these things going. You got economic inequality. You've got political dysfunction, horrible. You've got tinderboxes of discontent that have been fermenting and are ready to explode all over the country. You've got global instability with China and Ukraine and Israel, and next it's going to be Africa. China and Russia are going to make trouble in Africa for our allies. They're going to make trouble for the French and their French colonies. They're going to create new firestorms. Then you're going to get Turkey, one of our NATO allies. They're going to get pulled into this because if the Middle East conflict grows, Turkey's going to come into play. Turkey's not a nuclear power, but Pakistan is, and Pakistan will offer assistance to Turkey. So you've got global instability. Then you've got tribalism. Next slide. Now, on top of all of that, you got the human brain. You got the Achilles heel, the trap door. 99% of the information coming in outside your conscious awareness. And you've got social media that people can reach into your phones. Your phone has 100,000 times the computing power that NASA had in 1969, and your child carries it around in their pocket. Now you've got data, which allows you to weaponize social media and target people with weapons-grade precision, right? Knowing exactly how to influence them, exactly what they need to say, exactly what imagery, exactly what messaging. And you've got barriers to truth. You've got the media feeding us false narratives, profit-driven narratives, right? Put all the dots together, and it's a toxic mix. It's a perfect storm. It's a perfect storm. Next. Solutions. So what do we do? What the fuck do we do? Okay? Next. Adaptation. Charles Darwin said it's not the strongest or the most intelligent that survive. It's those most capable of adaptation, right? We need to be adaptive. We need to be resilient. We need to be, as Nicholas Taleb writes in his book, Anti-Fragile, we need to be anti-fragile, okay? Taleb gives a great metaphor. He says that the wind extinguishes a candle, but it ignites a flame. Be the flame and wish for the wind, right? Be the flame and wish for the wind, okay? That's adaptation. Fire ants drowned in torrential rains, right? They can't survive. They would all be wiped out. What do? They lock their legs and self-assemble into floating rafts. Together, by collaborating, they survive. alone they would perish. Look at nature. The examples are there for you. Look at the schools of fish that travel in a school. Look at the flocks of sterlings that travel in a flock. Look at the ant colonies, look at the bee colonies, right? They collaborate. The answer is collaboration. When I asked David Broom, is it individuals or is it teams? He said, it's teams, right? The great work of today and tomorrow is done in teams. It is not done by individuals, okay? When the Wright brothers created their plane, they had how many people working on the aircraft engine? A couple, half a dozen, right? Today, it takes 6,000 people to build Boeing's aircraft engine. Just the engine are working on that engine, okay? In the 1920s, you had the average scientific paper had one author. The 1950s, it had 8 authors. Today, the average scientific paper has 35 authors. A recent scientific paper on AI had 5,000 authors. 5,000 authors, okay? The great work of today, yesterday, today, and tomorrow is not done by individuals. It is done in teams. And maybe the members of the team that you need for what you're trying to accomplish could be in this room. You have to get to meet them. You have to get to know them, right? You have to see what you can build with the resources that a team can create. Next, Nika, finding the truth. You know, if you want to find the truth, you have to be passionate in your search for the truth. You have to trade validation for the truth, right? We all want to be loved. We want to be validated. You know, you don't want to say anything on social media that's going to offend people, right? Because by God, they may not like you, right? I don't care. I don't care if you like me or not. I hope you do. I want to be loved just like everybody else. I really hope you do. But this is far more important to me. This is far more important to me than being loved. If you know, we all have our beliefs, we all have our North Stars. I want mine to be this. I want mine to be truth. I just think it's the way to live a well-lived life, and I don't want to live in a fiction, and I don't want to live in a fantasy. I want to know the truth. I want to act on the truth. I want to make good decisions based on the truth. You know, I played poker for a while. I stopped during COVID. I played in the World Series 3 times. And it's all about not allowing your opponent to have the truth. It's about deception, the art of war. The art of war is about deception, right? When I'm playing poker with you and I have a weak hand, I want you to think I have a strong hand. When I have a strong hand, I want you to think I have a weak hand, right? So it's the art of war is about deception, okay? Because people make bad decisions with bad information. And in poker, you want the guy making a bad decision, so you want to feed him bad information. If you want good decisions, then you need good information. You need the truth. Next. Breakthrough knowledge. What are you looking for? You're looking for that piece of information, right? When you're reading, when you're watching TV, when you're studying, when you're doing things, don't look for things that tell you that you're right. If you're right, you're fine. You're in great shape if you're right. Look for things that tell you that you're wrong. Search for breakthrough knowledge. All of scientific discovery and advance happens through the discovery of breakthrough knowledge. Edison does 10,000, trials with the light bulb until he gets it right? But each time he's finding out where he's wrong, right? He's finding that breakthrough knowledge that's saying, you're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. Move on, move on, move on. 10,000 times until you're right. That's what you're looking for. You're looking for the things that say, I'm wrong, right? I don't need anybody to tell me I'm right. I need you to tell me when I'm wrong. My wife's very good at that. She tells me when I'm wrong all the time. Next, knowledge versus intelligence. Knowledge will be ubiquitous. Kurzweil says that by the 2040s, our neural cortex will be connected to the cloud. All of the world's information. Today, when I was a kid, I had to go get on my bike and go to the library to learn something. Today, my daughter goes on her phone and she Googles something and she's got the information instantaneously. In 20 years, 30 years, you won't have to go on your phone. You will think of a question and the answer will come to you instantaneously through the cloud. Okay? This is what Kurzweil says. This is what the biggest brain in AI is saying. The answer will come to you instantaneously. He says you'll go to sleep and you'll wake up learning a new language. You think there's going to be any reprogramming? You know, like the Chinese are doing with the Uyghurs in China, right? You think there's going to use this technology to reprogram the way people think with this trap door and this ability to go to sleep and wake up learning a new language? You'll be able to go to sleep and learn a new Pledge of Allegiance when you wake up too, okay? So this is the type of stuff that is coming. So knowledge will be everywhere. You will know everything I know, and I will know everything you know. Some people are talking about a hive mentality, that we will have not just a cloud with instantaneous data dumps of everything that is known on the planet, but that we'll have a hive mentality, and everything that's in Jason's mind from the 70 books that he read this year, I'll know without having to read the books, right? And everything I know, Jason will know, right? So knowledge is not the Holy Grail. The Holy Grail is intelligence, okay? Now, what's the difference? Well, let's say you have this ability to simply ask a question and the answer will come to you from this all-knowing source, right? You have that new technology, that new opportunity. What questions are you going to ask? What questions are you going to ask? What questions are you going to be able to ask? What questions are you going to know to ask? That's intelligence, right? Knowing the right questions to ask is intelligence, okay? Albert Camus, French philosopher, said that the sign of intelligence is a mind that is able to look at itself. So introspection, the ability to see your own biases, right? If you're examining a problem and you have biases, then you are automatically analyzing that information according to those biases. You have to be aware of those biases in order to control those biases, right? So your mind has to look at itself, and you have to be aware. You have to take inventory of how you think and why you think and how you were raised and what you were taught and why you think the way you do, right? And you need to keep that in check, because not all of that is helping you discern the truth, right? So that's the difference between knowledge and intelligence. Next. People need the ability to make sense of information, to tell the difference between what is important and what is unimportant, and above all, to combine many bits of information into a broad picture of the world. Again, Harari. My metaphor is the jigsaw puzzle. Combine many bits of information into a broad picture of the world. What does Stavros know? What does Rudy know? What does Michelle know? What does Joe know? What does Jason know? What does Nico know? If I can combine that many pieces of information, I can get a broad picture of the world, okay? So that's how you learn. That's critical thinking. That's true intelligence, is gathering up all that information, understanding your own limitations on the way you view the world, and looking at things objectively in a passionate search for the truth. That's what I try to do. That's what you need to try to do. Next. Collaboration. Again, collaboration is the way forward, okay? It's not competition. Things have changed. You can't look at things the way, if you take a 1940 mentality, World War II mentality towards, national disagreements, and we use war, right? We fight wars. Well, so let's keep fighting wars. Well, you know what? It's not 1940, folks, okay? We are in a post-nuclear, pre-singularity age. It is a different world, and you better start thinking about it differently. Instead of thinking about well, what did we do to Hitler? And how did we handle him? And, how should we do it with this guy, right? And we stood up to Hitler, and so we have to stand up to Russia and Ukraine, right? I mean, if you really knew the whole story in Ukraine, what a crock of shit that is, okay? But you don't know because you're not looking. Because you haven't gone back to 1987 and read Putin's speeches at the Munich Security Conference like I have. You haven't dug. You haven't done the research. So you don't know, okay? But it's a bunch of shit. It's a bunch of shit. NATO has, when it was formed, was 12 countries. We have an Article 5 obligation to come to the aid of our NATO allies. That was limited to 11 other countries back in 1980 when Ronald Reagan was president. Today, we got 31 countries that we have an Article 5 obligation to. If Russia steps on Estonia's toe, then we've got an Article 5 obligation. How does that make us more secure, right? It doesn't, right? It just leads to conflict. And why are we cutting off, Putin? He's a monster. He's a horrible guy. He kills people. He's a terrible person, right? Yeah, okay, great. I'll give you all that. Well, so was Joseph Stalin, right? But we sat down at Yalta and we worked out a deal, right? So we can't sit down with this guy? We can't work out a deal, right? A deal can be made, okay? I've been a negotiator. I studied negotiation at Harvard in 1995 and 1996. I was the speaker at the Nevada Trial Lawyers Association on negotiation. I know something about negotiation. And you could strike a deal with Vladimir Putin where he not only pulls out of Ukraine and the Donbass, but that he gives back Crimea. You can strike that deal, okay? Why aren't we doing it? You can strike a deal with China over Taiwan. Why aren't we doing it? Are we gonna risk a nuclear war over this? Is that the answer? Not in my book. I think the people that think that that's the answer are people that are unable to negotiate the kind of deals that I'm talking about. They lack the capacity to negotiate those deals. They can't even envision those deals. How are you going to get Putin out of Crimea, right? Well, Putin wants markets. He doesn't want his economy in shambles. He wants to be part of NATO. Ronald Reagan, his Secretary of State, James Baker, said that we should be inviting Russia to join NATO. They occupy the largest border with China. China is the real threat. Why wouldn't we want Russia on our team, right? That was James Baker under Ronald Reagan. I agree with James Baker, okay? Collaboration. The answer is collaboration in everything. Next. Okay, just real quickly, because we're gonna go to lunch. People Reign is an NFT project that I launched. These are some of the products that I'm creating. They're political. This is Jay Powell. He's got a money gun. He's printing money. Okay, these are two Federal Reserve chairmen who resigned in disgrace for insider trading. They got guns and they're stealing the money. Okay, so it's political satire, right? This is Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She's blowing up a bubble with Ben Franklin in the center because she wants $10 trillion in additional spending. So she wants to blow up the US dollar. Okay, this is what's that? These are all videos, yeah, these are all videos. It's called People Reign. These things are very cheap right now. You can buy some of these NFTs for a couple $100. Maybe if word gets out about what I'm doing with this political satire, maybe they'll be worth something. But don't buy them as an investment. I'm not telling you they're gonna be worth anything, but buy them because, maybe 100 years from now, people who didn't live through these issues will care about these issues and will want some kind of a collectible or a memento of someone who bore witness to what was going on. So I've done NFTs on Donald Trump. I've done NFTs on Nancy Pelosi and Rudy Giuliani, and there's all sorts of them. So anyway, I wanted to let you know about that. Next. Uvolution, we've already talked about. The website is uvolution.io. And it's all about change is coming and how to accelerate your evolution. Thank you. Now let's go to lunch.